Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Part 195, 3D Modeling for Animation for the spring semester 2021. Hold on here. I should have checked. Oh, shoot. Never mind. Let me pause the recording for a minute.
Recording in progress.
Okay, to continue. So what we were working on last Wednesday with surfacing, and I was having difficulty with the displacement map. And there's a good reason for that. And that is because the type is so small on my screen, and you probably can't even see it, that I had the wrong one selected. I had surface displacement, not displacement map. So if I turn the displacement map on, this is what I get. Okay. Now, how I get that is that you double click on it, and it looks very similar to what we have used before. Okay. I only want, if I only want the window frame to pop out or to recede, if I do it the opposite way, notice that it looks inset. I mean, that might be the look that you're going for too, but that's not what I wanted. That I use that image, okay, that we used for, well, I'm using it in this case for a displacement map, but in the past for surfacing, to isolate areas, to use them to use it as a mask. Okay, so because it's the only thing on here, it just needs to be set to normal, not an alpha, like it does when it overlays an image. So that's all there is to it. You can set right here the layer opacity. It's set very low. If I want to, I have it only set at 2.5%. If I were to set this by default at 100%, watch what happens. Nuts, huh? So I'm going to go back and maybe set it to 1% and see how that looks. It's not quite enough. I'll go 2%. Notice how, the window frame pops out now. But remember, before I was able to do that, I had to, let's go over to Modeler. Come on. I had to take that one polygon and subdivide it into much, much smaller polys. And if I wanted to subdivide that again, I could. But remember that when you do that, it will take longer for rendering time. And for those of you who are doing this for games, maybe not such a good idea. Okay, so let me switch back to layout. So I've got that remedied. A couple of other things, and where that is found, just so that you know, where do you find displacement maps for an object? Is that you have to select the object and you select properties. And it's right down here at the bottom. And again, I apologize. As soon as we ended our webinar last Wednesday, I was able to look really closely, and I had surface displacement selected. And that's why nothing was happening. I want instead the displacement map, and that's why when I tried to double click on it, nothing was happening to it. So, but a couple of other things that we should look into is the reflective properties of the windows and the bump map as well. So I'm going to close window displacement and I'm going to bring up the surface editor again. And let's just look at the window. So I didn't have reflective properties, but one of the things that I had is the refraction index for this is set to 1.5. If that is more, if I were to set that to 2, okay, it really distorts the glass. Okay, so I'm going to go back to 1.5. That's one of the things that you should consider, or even maybe reduce it even a little bit more to 1. But the default setting is 1.5, and you can see how it changes the properties of the glass. Refraction index, by the way, is the degree to which the object bends light. And anytime light goes through things like glass, water, stuff, there is a refraction index. So I'm going to go back to the 1.5. That works for me. Okay. That's kind of nice because I'm also, by doing that, if I were to really crank that up, I really wouldn't see much of the inside. So it depends on if you know, how much of the inside of the cube you want to see. If I turn that up even more, you're probably not going to see hardly anything. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was the reflection. So with the window selected, if I go to reflection, I have it set to 20%. If I were to crank that all the way up to 100%, you would have a mirror. And actually, notice the whole side is reflected. I don't want that. In fact, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to select reflection as 0. Let's go back and select surface editor again to bring that back. Okay. So it's working just fine. So I'm going to select reflection at 0 and watch what happens. Okay, nothing happens because I set a reflection map. And to do that, if I click T for texture, now this is where you need both the image that you want to reflect. I wanted to reflect that river image in the glass. And to make sure that it's only, if I turn off the window panes, notice that it reflects on the entire side. That's not what I want. I want to make sure that it only reflects in the window panes. So again, I brought in the window panes mask. That's what I have here for my mask. And because I had to invert it, and if it looks wrong, if you see that it's just the opposite that's reflected, then make sure that you invert it. So right now, the only areas that are being affected are the window panes. That's what I want. And I don't want this to be repeat. I'm going to go ahead and reset, even though it can't be repeated anyway. And then let's also select this along the x-axis and see what we get. Notice how it doesn't look right. If I select it along the y, a little bit better, but not really. And if I select it along the z, which is the default, that looks much better. Now the size of that, the scale of the reflection, I'm leaving it at 1 meter, and that looks pretty good. Okay, so there are all these settings that you have to take into account. And again, the mask has to be set to alpha. The image which sits beneath it, you can sit at 100% opacity, or it can be reduced. The entire layer opacity can be changed as well. Now that's different from affecting over here under window reflections. Now this again was set to 20%. Let me go back and set this to 0 and see what we get. Yeah, and it shouldn't have any effect at all. Why that is? Because we have a map selected so that the map is overriding what we see here rather than affecting the entire side. It's only affecting the areas that we have specified. Okie doke. Some of the other things that I want to touch base on, and you can, turn all these off or on at will. to see, how things are working. Another thing that I was playing with too is the environment light, because if I go to lights and I select the environment light and I select properties, it's set to, let's close this. I set it back to 75%. Now, by default, it's set to 100%. So let's look at that and see what we have. And notice how everything is much brighter. So it's just a big, it's kind of, it used to be ambient light, but now it's considered an environment light. And that looks nice, but it looks a little fake. So I turned it down a little bit. And generally the way I do that is I will have things to see if they look better or they look worse. And actually that's not half bad. If I want it to look a little bit stronger on the lighted side, rather than change the environment light, I might go back now and under lights, select my distant light that I'm using at the moment and look at the properties for that. Now this is only set to 3.14 lux. So why don't we double that and I'll make it 6 lux. Now crank it up a little bit. And that doesn't look half bad. Okay. So I have a nice strong top side where the plane is the lightest. I have the front side where the window is, it's a little bit darker because it's receives quite a bit of light. And then I have a shadow side. When they all look the same or they're all lighted equally, it has, it doesn't have a strong three-dimensional quality to it. Okay. Now, if I go back, notice that some of the reflectivity is gone here. So let me go back and let me go back with the environment light and see if that's what is affecting it. So I'm going to go back here and instead of 50%, I'm going to crank it back up to 75%. And for some reason, I don't know, I hit the, I leave it at 50 because I like that better. But these are all the settings that you need to take into consideration when you're doing your toy. Okay. What, as you're building the object, what is its, is it basically made out of? Is it made out of wood, plastic, glass, metal? Is it a painted surface or does it have decals on it? Is there type on that surface? Because I could just as easily apply an image on top of this of type or a sticker, or if I wanted to look like I have sprayed graffiti on top of it, I could do that using all of the same techniques. Okay. So let me go back again to the surface editor and check again for reflection. Why is that? I had it much stronger before. So that's at 100%, reset, 1 meter, 1 meter. Let me go back and let's check the x-axis. And that might be why, because the x-axis could have been the one that I needed. But if you recall, all the other axes that I used were x. You can see how reflective the surface is now. That's not exactly the way I want it, but I'm going to leave that for a moment. And again, so that you have to feel comfortable playing with this. And now I'm going to change the refraction index to change it to 1. Okay. So it's allowing me to see through that a little bit more. I'm going to change that again to maybe 0.5. And I don't like any of those. I'm going to go back to the 1.5. And I'm going to change the axis of the reflection. So I'm going to go back here. So, I see what I did. That is X. Let's change it to Z. We got this, X. I have this mixed up. So let me go back again. Here we have this, and it should be X, I believe. There we go. Let's go ahead and select this one and make sure that that is X as well. And that's looking much better. But again, the reason that it's so shiny here is because of the refraction index. So I'm going to turn that down to 1. Again, notice how I'm playing with this, going back and forth until I get something that I like. And you can see that some of that that river image is reflected in here. So if you want, we could turn the reflectivity down. We could go back until you get something that's working for you. The other thing is that we need to look maybe at the bump map, and that creates that ripply surface in the glass. Okay. And again, make sure that I have reset. It's along the x-axis. So again, bump amplitude by default is set to 1. Maybe if I go ahead and I set that to 0.5. And by doing that, it'll be less of a ripple, and maybe I can see more inside my object. And that really doesn't change much. So I'll go back to 1. If I want to make this a really tiny little ripples, then I probably need to make this much smaller. Instead of 100 meter or 1 meter, I'll change it to 100 millimeters. And watch how the ripples change. Okay, so it's much smaller now. And it's not as wavy as it was before. So I'm going to go back to the 1 meter, which is the default setting. And that looks much better. Okay. So again, for the bump map, I want to make sure that I'm using turbulence. That's a good one to use for bumps. But make sure that it's only bump. If I turn off the window mask, notice that everything gets kind of bumpy along that side plane. So to make sure that only the window panes are bumped, I make sure I added that mask of the window panes, and that's it. So now I have a good reflection in here. You can see inside just a little bit. If I wanted to see even more inside, probably what I want to do is put a light inside there, and you would be able to see through. So now I've added a whole bunch of maps now. And you can see by using, let's start at the bottom here. I added the bump map, which I have applied to only the window panes. We added a reflection map. Well, I don't want reflection blur. I just want, that's refraction blur. No, I don't want that. I don't know why I did that. Okay. Refraction index for the glass, it need only be 1. Let's go ahead and I'm going to add a bump map or a map to it and see if that makes any difference in that. So again, I'm going to go ahead and make sure it's along the x-axis. I'm going to reset, and we're going to apply just the planes to it. So I'll set to normal and planar, and let's go ahead and add the window panes. Where are they? There you go. And I need to invert it. So the refraction index, again, is only being applied not to the entire area, but just to the window panes, which is the smarter way to go. And if I crank that up to the default setting or a 1.5, we can see if that has an effect. Again, I'm constantly playing with this until I'm getting a look that appeals to me. Okay. And then we have a transparency. Now, the only place where we added transparency were the window panes. And again, if I turn that off, just by clicking that, you can see how the glass is no longer transparent. It's highly reflective, but we can't see through it. So by clicking this and adding this image map, it allowed us to actually poke a hole through it without affecting the geometry. Now, for objects that appear really close, you may need to have to change the geometry. But for an object that's in the middle of your scene or in the background, maps, I think, are the way to go. And you can see that the layer opacity that I set for that, I set for 95%. Now, if I go ahead and I crank that up to 100%, again, let's see how that affects it. Okay, very subtle, but let's change the opacity of that layer to 50% and see what happens. Yeah, very different. So, you have to keep playing with these settings. And I'm going to go back to maybe 90% to get the look that I'm going for. So that was our transparent map or reflection. And then we have the reflection map. And again, I only want reflectivity in the window panes. So if I click here, again, what do I want reflected? It could be anything. I picked from our library the river image. And again, where I wanted to apply it is only the window panes. So again, if I turn that off and I make it, invert the layer, notice that reflection applies in the entire area here, not just the window panes. So that when I invert it, now just the window panes are being affected. I know I'm sounding redundant, but again, that's what we need for this. So again, we have our wood texture for the rest of the box. Okay. Planar. We have our wood window JPEG. Okay. This is also the window that is being applied. Okay. The one that I built the frame and the window panes in Photoshop. But then we want assigned to that overall, remember that I made kind of a silhouette image of that. So now I have both the wood and I have the picture being defined by this. Very nice. Okay. So the last step for you guys is to render this. And you don't have to do what I'm doing here, but you go ahead and you would render. And it doesn't hurt for me to go over that briefly. To say that, okay, I'm ready to render this. I'm happy with the look of it. The background can leave black, do whatever. Make sure that I select the camera setting. Go to properties for that camera. And I'm just using the default perspective camera. And it's 24 millimeters. What I would like you guys to do for the next series of your renderings, if you didn't do that already, is to make sure that it's HD TV 1280 by 720. And instead of the multiplier being 100% for your final rendering, crank it up to 200%. Okay. The rest of this alone, height, width, aspect ratio, don't ever change that. And then what you're going to do for your final render too, as we talked about with your reboot character. The minimum samples, crank that up to 8, and then the maximum samples, make it maybe 12, 16. And that will take out the jaggies that you see. Okay, and it takes a little bit longer to render, but while you're doing test renders, leave it 1 and 8, and that will be fine. And then the last thing that we need to do is make sure that the render tab is selected. And what we want to do is we want to go to render properties. So now I can go over here, and under general, we can pretty much leave all of this the same. Notice the preview render is 1280 by 720. That's fine. The preview render will slow down your rendering. So if you want to turn it off, you can, or if you want to make it smaller, you can. I like seeing it at a reasonable size, and it doesn't bother me that the rendering takes a little bit longer. So I leave that on. We're just rendering a single frame. We're not rendering an animation, so we don't have, multiple frames that are being rendered. And then when I go to render here, we can leave all of these settings for the most part alone. If you want to start playing with these, you can. Now, number diffuse bounces, you can crank that up. Ray recursion limit, most of these just have to be left alone. Reflection samples, maybe if reflectivity is important, I could crank that up to maybe 2 or 3. Refraction samples, the same thing, maybe 2. Don't have to change it much. And we're set to go. Probably what I would also want to do down here at the bottom where it says noise is I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. Noise filter. And I think you'll get a better quality rendering from that if you do that. Okay. And then you have to ask yourself here, you want to make sure that you ray trace lines, you ray trace the reflection, you ray trace the refraction, especially if you have, transparent objects. If you have reflectivity at all, shininess of surfaces, you want to make sure that reflection is enabled. Render lines, sure. Render instances, sure. Lens flares is iffy. I don't have any lens flares in this, so I'm turning it off. There we go. So that's unnecessary. It doesn't need to go through those steps. The next one under global illumination. Okay, this makes a huge difference. I'm going to use here under the number of rays. I'm going to use for this rendering, I'm going to go to 10. I've gone as low as 8, and I've gotten good results. So why don't I do that? And then if you want, enable the secondary with brute force, then do that, and also change the rays and make them also maybe 8 rays for that. Oftentimes, if you only render with 1 ray, you're not going to get the results that you had hoped for. And then if you have volumetrics, then you're going to want to turn those on. Make sure that that's set. We don't have any fog in here, but that's something that we might want to play with for your final project. But that's pretty much it. If you're going to use volumetrics, no, I don't need to enable volumetrics because I turned that off before. I don't have anything. Make sure that you don't, under lighting, this is how it will affect it. If I go back to my lights and I look at their light properties, and let's make sure that I select not the environment light, but the distant light. That for the distant light, you can change the settings. It really isn't that important. You can change the size, the angle of it. You can also change the distance of it. Excuse me. If I were to change this from a distant light to, for example, Let's change it to a spotlight. You're going to see a huge difference in the lighting. Okay, it probably isn't even pointing at the object. So maybe one of the things that you need to do is, instead of looking at this under the current camera, look at this from the light view. Okay, and we can look at the light and let's see what it's pointing at. It's pointing at the object, okay, but that means that it needs to be cranked up considerably, the intensity of the light. If I want to affect, where this thing is pointing, I can move it. I can hit T for move for the light, make sure that light is selected. And I probably should turn off VPR because that slows everything down. But notice the big ring around it so I can tell. So I'm going to move my light a little bit around more to the front. Now I can hit Y for rotate. And that looks pretty good. And now I can come back, and with the light shaded solid, let's go back to VPR. And let's also go back to camera view. But you can see by changing this and making sure that I have inverse distance turned on, especially if I want to use the volumetrics on this, that you can't, if you switch from turning that off, it brightens everything up, but your volumetrics won't work. So if you do choose to use volumetrics, make sure that inverse distance is selected, and then you're going to have to just crank up the amount of light that you have here. Let's say 24. And I just keep pumping it up, 24 lux, 48 lux, until I get something that I'm, happy with. Now, if I want volumetrics here, I can go ahead and it will work. But remember, I turned it off for most of that. So I'm in pretty good shape here. It's looking pretty much the way I had planned it. Are there any questions so far about what I've covered? I think I'm going to leave this for today. And then on Wednesday, I'll start to cover lighting. In the meantime, though, I think some people need help. And again, I'm going to repeat about the toy assignment. It can be any toy you want, but my recommendation is to pick something extremely simple. A simple toy that a toddler would use. It could be a top. It could be a little wooden train. If you don't want to technically use a toy, one of the things that people have done in the past is select chess pieces, maybe render one or two or model one or two chess pieces. And for your final assignment, if you want to do an entire chess board, that would be ideal. But then, it's a way of getting started. What else? Yeah, so you can pick any object, but try not to spend too much time on the modeling. It shouldn't take you that long to build a simple toy. And then once it's built, then what I want you to do is focus as what we've been working on here the past two demonstrations, is the surfacing and then the lighting. And then I'm going to show you on Wednesday different lighting techniques, and also a way of putting it in an environment. If you don't want a black environment, if you want a nice white or light environment, we can do that. We have something that's called it's kind of like a bowl that we can, and it's called a render stage, or a light stage rather. It's similar to what photographers use to create when they use coved walls, so that you don't see the edge of a wall, but it helps you focus on the object itself. That works really well. But on the other hand, with the toy assignment, if you want to put it in an environment like we did the reboot character, you can do that as well. Okay. So if there aren't any questions, I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to, Andrew, do you want me to turn off the recording while I do this? And see if I can't answer some of your questions. I'm going to elevate you to, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to promote you to panelist. I'm going to stop sharing. And if you want, you can share your screen and let me know how I can help you. Hold on, I got to make sure that you can share. I can, hold on, all panelists. There you go. So you should be able to share your screen. And if you unmute, let me know how I can help you. I can't hear you, no.
Hello, 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 hello.
There you go. Now I can hear you.
There we go. Good morning. All right. So, I mean, I was, let me see, share screen. How do I share screen again?
There should be a little button at the bottom. It's mine is in green and it says share screen.
There we go. Right in front of me. All right. So let me show you what I have so far. So this is the toy that I'm working on. I'm planning to add more. He is very simple. I was gonna ask you if that's okay. Because if you want to look up the character, his name is Mr. Saturn. But this is him so far.
What does he look like? Can you put him in a background of something?
Yeah, it's I had a little toy of him right here, right next to me, so that's what I was using. So actually, hold on, let me get a picture of the toy that I was using. Let's see here. I'll just share it on my screen. It's here on Google. Thank you, Zoom, for working. Let me see. Stop screen. Share screen. I'm just gonna share my, yeah, right here. So this is how he looks like. And that's what
okay.
that's
That'll
what
work.
That'll work. All right, for sure. So let me stop screen sharing.
If you have, yeah, start with that, and if you have the time, make the box that he comes in.
Oh, well, my plan was to add like kind of like a base, like make him look like a trophy. So like,
okay,
it's hard to explain on here without showing it, but pretty much I was gonna like add like maybe like a cylinder right here at the bottom, and then it's gonna have like a black base around it, and like on top it's gonna like, or like underneath the character it's gonna be like a yellow. It's based on figures that I like to collect. So my problem, oh, what was that? Sorry.
One of the things that I say right off hand that I can say that need to be adjusted a little bit is that his feet.
Oh yeah, the feet. I was gonna,
when you make the cylinder, add rounded corners.
Rounded corners.
Soften it.
Yeah. I was trying to do what we did with the reboot mic, kind of like how we did his feet. I really like how we did that. So I was like trying to do it. I was following the steps again, but I was like, because
if you put the feet on, are they on a separate layer?
Yeah, they're on a separate layer.
Okay, then just select that layer.
That one. We're right here.
There you go. You have just the top here. So select the top polygon.
Yeah.
And hit the tab key.
Gave me the error message.
Right. I'm trying to figure out which of them that's okay. It will still work. So you had one of these selected and not everything. And when you hit the tab key, not everything was affected. So hit the tab key again. Okay, deselect. Or it might be easier just to remake the cylinder,
Yeah,
remake it
that's
real
what I was
quick.
thinking.
And then without selecting anything, then hit the tab key. And you are going to get an error message because the actually when you use it
Mhm.
the cylinder, you don't need 24 sides, probably 8 will be fine.
Yeah, hold on. Let me just go. It was the disk, I believe. See, I think I put it at 8 last time. Just
Okay, yeah, that'll work.
right here. Yeah, I was at 8.
Okay. Okay, that looks fine. You might want to add one to the X, add one side. I don't know how much you want it, how blobby you want it.
Went to the
So
let's
under
center X.
segments, make it 2.
Let's make it 2.
Okay, that's it. Go ahead and fix it.
So where's the what's it? This one? Oh no, I'll fix it later. Okay, so
Okay,
then
now hit the tab key.
I'll hit the tab key. There we go. We're
Okay, so
back.
it isn't working the way I'd hoped. So what you need to do is select the top polygon.
Mhm.
And then what you need to do is you need to go to under multiply tab,
Multiply. Yeah, right there.
then down at the bottom where it says more.
Right here.
Mm-hmm. Click on there. You want to say make poll.
Pull. Oh, I forgot my what's it called? Actually, my trial ended today. Uh
Okay.
man. Shoot. This is horrible timing. I didn't even think about it because I was working on it last night and it said you had 1 day. That's my apology.
So okay. That's okay, but that's what you need to do. But also, yeah, go ahead and use a different email and just set it up again,
Yeah,
and
that
you'll have used to
that
it.
that was the plan. That was the plan. Actually, my biggest problem was right here, the hair. This was the one that I wanted to work on the most. So, let me see. I should probably just save the picture of the character. But pretty much the hair kind of goes straight up in the game that he's from, right? But I kind of
Uh-huh.
wanted because I thought it was too simple. So I wanted to like kind of like bend it like the tip right here a
Okay,
little
so that
forward.
means when you do that, you need to add segments.
Oh,
So make the cylinder again, and then you can use the bend tool, and then you can either use a fall off or you can have it bend evenly.
yeah, because when I tried bending it last night and it was going all over the
It won't bend without any segments.
all right there. That's where
And
I
the way,
messed up.
and
Totally.
also the way that you have it set up,
Mhm.
that whatever you have the top view that when you bend it, you're gonna you put the mouse in the top view over it and then click and drag
Yeah.
for it to
Uh
work. If you try the other views, it won't. It'll look really wonky.
yeah, that it was pretty much almost rotating when I was working on it the other day. So I was
Yeah.
like, ah man. Yeah, that was it was pretty much that. The cylinder feet I could work on. I'm just gonna fix the email. I would rather maybe if I can just catch up, maybe tell you my progress on Wednesday.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I'll definitely try working on that. I just gotta restart my email and do all that again and get the account back.
Okay.
All right, but
Sounds
thank
good.
you so much, Professor.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you for your help.
Okie doke. Um, Okie doke. Let me go back to sharing my screen. So that is it for today, folks. On Wednesday, I will focus on lighting. Okay, and also using a light stage where the lighting is already established for you, but I want to point out the different kinds of lights that they use and how they're used and why. You'll have the key light, and you might have a second key light, and you'll have a backlight and a fill light, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so that your object is evenly lit. Okie doke. So I'm going to end the recording. I'm going to say goodbye, and I will see all of you on Wednesday. Okie doke. Okay, bye-bye.